You're good.
Okay. Morning. We call the Tuesday, August 27th meeting of the Door County Board of Supervisors to order. We stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Right. 19. 19 present.
We have 19 present and 2 excused. Could we have a motion to approve the agenda, please? I would say that I'd like to move up the special reports before we do our business. With that change, could we have a motion to approve the agenda? Okay, there's a motion by Supervisor Norton and a second by Supervisor Shaw. All those in favor signify by aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, that carries unanimously. Correspondence that was included in the packet. There was the C. Reed email and some postcards. Public comment. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to make some public comment? Okay, anyone online?
Okay, I'll check with those individuals online. If you'd like to make a comment, you could please raise your hand within the Zoom features and we'll have 3 minutes to speak. So I'll ask 2 more times if there's anyone who'd like to speak. And for the final time, is there anyone online who'd like to speak?
Okay, with no public comment, we won't have any supervisor's response. The minutes from the July 23, 2024 County Board meeting were included. Could we have motion to approve those, please? Okay, there's a motion by Supervisor Roy Engelbert, a second by Supervisor Zettel. Any discussion on those minutes? Any corrections, additions? If not, all those in favor of approval signify by aye.
Aye.
Okay. Okay, before we go any further in our agenda, we'll ask Michelle Lurie to come up and present her report on the Door County Economic Development. Welcome.
Good morning, everyone. As Chairman Engelbert said, I am Michelle Lurie, and I am the Executive Director of the Door County Economic Development Corporation. And I am so happy to be here with you today. I asked Administrator Pavick if I could have a few minutes just to discuss some things with you, give you an update on programs and what's going on and what's left for the rest of the year and in the rest of our strategic plan. So I'm here with our Director of Business Development, Devin Vandertij. She's in the back. And I just want to introduce you to her. She has been here for almost a year now. So we're so happy to have her, and she's been a great addition to the team. So I just wanted to start by this, if I could go back, Ken, please. I just want to show you some pictures and tell you why I picked these. They are significant for the cover of this slide because they're all germane to some of the programs that we do. One is, of course, is the Sheriff's Office, which was the most popular booth at our youth fair that we did for career and trades employment that we had, that we do every year, but that we had for the sophomores and juniors and some seniors of the 5 area schools. And we also included Algoma in that. So definitely the most popular attendees there. We also have 2 in the middle of loans that we've done through, and I'll go over that program, but we have a revolving loan fund program that is a gap financing program that we help, and we helped Desjardins Laundromat. We also helped Fire Fitness that is in the West Marine Plaza with help from the county. And then the last one is a seminar we did for manufacturing with Door County Coffee. And that is one of our manufacturing days events that we do in October. So we'll be doing that here pretty soon. And that you might think that sounds funny with doing a Door County coffee for manufacturing, but a lot of our manufacturing is food manufacturing. So that's a lot of what happens in the county. So go to just talk about our leadership team. Thank you, Ken, for the controls. And I just wanted to go over who our board leadership is. We are a public-private organization. We're a 501c3. We're so happy to have 2 of your members of your board, as well as your administrator, on our board of directors. So Jeff Miller and Todd Thays, thank you so much for your sacrifice of time and your input into our programs. And of course, Administrator Pavick has been very helpful with shaping our programs and our policies for the organization. So we have community representation. We also try to be diverse geographically as well as industry based. So we have manufacturers, we have folks from retail, hospitality, all sorts of industries to kind of form our board of directors. So wanted to just show you how that works. And this is our team. So in addition to Devin and I, we have Kathy Lissay, who is a part-time coordinator of accounting and operations. As you know, we have the Incubator Business Center at 185 East Walnut Street in the industrial park in Sturgeon Bay. And so we are home to several companies there. We have certainly an industrial base that we are pretty full on, office base, a little less full on. In the industrial park, office is really not the most popular thing to be doing right now. So not a lot of people want office, but we are, I will tell you, home to those who come into town that are moving up here. We actually have a resident this week who said, I'm moving here, but I am here with my in-laws and staying with them, but I have no place to do work. So can I rent the office for a day or for a week? So we're doing that. We have a lot of folks like that we're trying to help get onto and convince them to move here, be part of the workforce, be part of the, even if it's remote workforce. So there's me. And then we also have Jeff Bremer, who takes everything, care of everything in the plant. He's been there for almost 25 years. And then Gabby Chernogle is a student that we do the youth apprenticeship program through. This is her last week in the job. She is going to be a senior at Sturgeon Bay High School. She's been helping us with our marketing and communications. And so just a reminder of our mission, it's really all things economic vitality in Door County, but we have stated it as influencing meaningful change that promotes economic development in Door County in ways that enhance our unique qualities of our community and ensure long-term viability through responsible stewardship. I won't read this whole slide because we'll go into it, but basically the 4 pillars of our strategic plan that we did 2023 to 2025, we do 3-year strategic plans, and our board was heavily involved in that, of course, to create these 4 pillars that are the core of DCEDC's work. And that's business advancement and advocacy. That's really our bread and butter. Entrepreneurial growth. We also do work on sustainable living. As we know, there are a lot of things that are barriers to economic development across the country, but maybe acutely in Door County, which are things like housing, childcare, things like that are keeping folks out of the workforce that we want to focus on. And then communications engagement. How are we communicating with you? How are we engaging you? But also, how are we communicating what we're doing in Door County to the rest of the state and the region and actually the country for all of the things that we're doing that are great in Door County that you're doing. But also, how do we engage people to want to be a part of our community? So that's what that pillar is. So I'm going to go into the kind of bread and butter that is Door County Economic Development Corporation, and that's really to provide programs, initiatives, and services that support the success of all businesses in Door County, and that's really regardless of size or sector. So just some highlights from 2024. I'm going to go through these in a quick fashion, but they're really what has happened in 2024 and what's left to be done throughout this rest of this strategic plan, and then we'll talk a little bit about building the next 3-year strategic plan. So as I mentioned at the beginning of my comments, we facilitate a high school job fair every year. So we've had over 550 students that are engaged. regarding job opportunities as well as youth apprenticeship opportunities. As you'll recall, the youth apprenticeship program was formerly under DCEDC. It is now branched off on its own, but we are still that door to the businesses that they are connecting with and those programs. So that is great. We have a great relationship with them. So we continue to do that. We also, again, do our manufacturing month, as I think all of you know. Contrary to popular opinion, manufacturing is actually our largest contributor to the economy in Door County. And so that is very important for us to get the workforce that they need, and for them to really, for our students to understand what's going on in their backyard. So we're going to continue to focus on that. We reinvigorated our Business and Education Partnership Committee, and we did that for a particular reason. The youth apprenticeship program is kind of what we call the pinnacle of those students who can spend 450 hours a semester at a facility, and that is great. We want to promote that. There's also those students who maybe can't do that. Maybe they're in other programs, but how do we engage everyone? Then there are students who maybe aren't so happy with school and maybe want to move on to, which we know we have those as well, that they flourish in other opportunities, but not really maybe in school. And so we want to grab those, and that's what we're working on to do that. So, and one of the partnerships I wanted to bring up that we do, that we've got great participation with the county board, is the Bay Area Workforce Development Board, which we have Supervisor Thays and Chairman Engelbert, who are part of that. And that is the basic 18 county community or regional organization that helps connect Door County to all those resources across the region, and really to help us take advantage of some of the dollars and also the programs that are available at the region. So I want to thank you for your participation in that. I am also a piece of that. But that is a partnership that is critical to our workforce development efforts. One of the things that we did is we collaborated with the county, with County Administrator Ken Pavick on the Collaborative Market Access Grant. It's called CMAG, and that helps our manufacturers and exporters to really get reimbursements for some of that new activity, and that's reimbursement from the state of Wisconsin. So the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation is what that WEDC is. And so we are able to do that. So just some of the things we've done in 2024. 2024, 2025, I talked about how we want to enhance some of those business and education programs and activities. Business retention communications and visits based on some of the 2024 survey data that we just did, which we will have an announcement go out about that next week. That's going to talk about an executive summary of what we found on that survey, just a little sneak peek on that. Big surprise, workforce is a challenge, as well as housing and childcare. We knew that. But, you know, one of the things that was so interesting to me on that survey is one of the biggest questions for employers here is the retirement community, and how their workforce is retiring out of work. And we just heard at our board meeting that from the UW Extension that our aging community, we have people that are right at the cusp of retiring from their jobs. So that means we're going to have to bring in more people or get our youth to be more participatory in the workforce. And then, you know, what does that look like? Also engage some of those retirement folks. Maybe it's a creative way of looking at how do we engage them in our workforce, and maybe flexibility. We have a lot of employers, some of them in this room, who are very flexible about doing that. So it's really understanding what we have. So we'll more on that. Tangentially, we also have the Workforce Development Conference that's coming up on September 20th. That's going to be at the Lodge at Latham Smith. We have a special speaker who wrote the book, Winning the War on Talent. He's a former military officer as well as a human resources officer. So he's kind of got all the different things that are going to kind of help to say, okay, here's how you can organize your recruitment, your talent development, and your talent attraction strategies. So we're happy to do that on September 20th. That will launch one of the committees I'll talk about in a minute that we're going to start for some more efforts. October Manufacturing Month, also our favorite, 2025 Legislative Days to the Capitol is coming up. We want to really start early on that. So that will be a public policy group that we will be starting to do. And I know you have a long history with that. That was my first year was last year. So it was a learning curve, but we're all ready to get started for 2025. Entrepreneurial growth, that is a huge part of what we do. Door County is a very entrepreneurial community. We do that really proactively and reactively. We do have a lot of people that seek us out and say, I want a business plan, I want to start, I want financing. And we kind of help them say, okay, here's what you need to think about. Here's what you need to kind of approach financing. And so we've worked so far with 45 entrepreneurs in 2024. That is up from last year at this time significantly. We partner with UW Green Bay of their Small Business Development Center to do an 8-week boot camp in the spring. So we try to get everybody there because we think it's really thorough and they can get it done in that 8 weeks. But we do it all year long. So if they can't get into that, or they might not be able to do 3 hours a night on Thursday, that certainly people are busy, that we funnel them through our programs and we meet with them one-on-one. So it is a lot, but it really has helped some businesses. And we've done 3 loans through the Sturgeon Bay Door County RLF program to date in 2024. And just a little bit about that, we administer 2 loan funds. They are really what we call gap financing programs. So we don't like to compete with banks. So if someone can go with a bank and that works for them, great. If there's a part of the program or the business that the bank will not finance, we fill that gap. So that actually is quite a bit. What happens is we will, the bank will finance the real estate, we will finance the equipment or something like that. That's what we did with some of the loans that I talked about earlier today. And that just helps, we can do a lower interest rate, so that helps the business be more successful and maybe have less of debt at the beginning. So we are very happy to do that. And that is administered through DC EDC, but the funds are held at the county. So we have a great relationship with Steve Whipperforth and his staff at the county level to administer that program. So some of those photos is funny. That one of the students there at the bottom, if you can see that, that is the Sturgeon Bay entrepreneurial class that they had, and that was so impressive. Devin and I met with them and they just really had their stuff together. They have a great faculty member that teaches them, but they came in with some of the business plans and they said, I was ready to present to them. They said, well, actually, can we present to you? We'd actually rather present to you. And they gave me, 2 of them gave us the business plan and they were all ready to go, and they are actually acting their business right now with some shoreline cleanup. So it's pretty cool. Anyway, that's some of the stuff that we do, is work with students that way. We had the startup, that second picture is the startup contest that we do every year, inaugurally last year with Kewaunee County. And I'd like to say you'd be proud to know that all of the entrepreneurs came from Door County, and the winners came from Door County. So Door County is representing there very well. Coming in 2024-25, we have that nice business center and that nice conference center. We're really looking to have some marketing classes, some accounting classes, some things like that small businesses has asked us for, is like, how do we get together and really understand what other entrepreneurs are going through? And that's really what they want most from us, is that connection with other entrepreneurs so they can get some best practices. But really those classes that are kind of very basic to what they need: marketing, accounting, legal. And of course, we're not lawyers or accountants, so we bring people in to help us do that. We are also putting some money in DC EDC. One of our loan funds was defederalized, meaning that the federal interest was abandoned in our program. So we are free to do with that cash what we can do. And we are putting part of that into the county RLF. And so that will be about $250,000 that will go into that fund so we can loan it back out, because we are low. I think we're really probably about $25,000 left right now. So we need to replenish that. So we're doing that, doing the pitch contest again. And then we're going to focus on part of that defederalized funding went to the city of Sturgeon Bay, or will be part of City Sturgeon Bay partnership with DCEDC, as they put the original funds in that program, 1994. So we will be working to diversify some of the industry work that is being done in Sturgeon Bay. So for example, if a business has an idea that, you know, I need to get a new type of a line in my plant or that kind of thing, it'd be something that maybe we could fund. So we're just looking, it's future, but looking for ways to do that. And some of that funding will be there. Just as quickly on the pictures, on the bottom, we did the groundbreaking for the Muse, which is the music school on 3rd Avenue in Jefferson. DCEDC was integral in that writing that development agreement between the developer and the city for some TID dollars that went toward that. Also, it's creating 11 studio apartments at the top that are very affordable. So that's helped about us a lot in our community, but we were a big part of that. It's a great development, certainly property tax revenue to the city and others for that development. And then the last one is one of the loans that we did for a restaurant in Bailey's Harbor, which is called Inland Door County, which should be open in about a week here. That's going to be right on 42. And so it'll be great business that we're trying to fund. So. And then the sustainable living, we have created in our office, one of the things that we've been asked for a lot is a rental inventory for rental residential units. So we are categorizing, it's definitely a lot of work. It's pretty tedious, but it's so helpful. We've gotten a lot of thanks for it. It's basically an inventory. We started in Sturgeon Bay and we're going across the whole county. What is really available in terms of rental units? And what are the price points and what are the requirements of getting those units? And then we're getting feedback from residents and others to kind of build that up. But one of the biggest things is we've forged relationships with some of the managers, which really helps us, and they will take our advice on something. Should I be doing this? What are you hearing? So it's been a really good communication with them. And I will tell you, we check it monthly. So we are at a very, very low vacancy. Even those new apartments that have been built are pretty much well occupied at this stage. We only have a few that are left. So this helps us for a couple of reasons. Not only does it help us with the residents to say what's available and people that are looking, but also helps us with developers to say, hey, this is full. This is why we need more. And these are the price points that we need. So that helps us in many ways. I'm very proud to serve as Hugh Zettle's vice chair for the County Broadband Committee and work with Jessica Hatch. That has been wonderful, as well as our collaboration on the secondary resident economic impact study related to broadband. We'll talk a little bit about what we're going to do with that. You've probably read some things about it and have talked about it. We've talked about it at the committee level. We will be going forward with a summit in October to talk about it with the whole new North region. So I'll talk about that in a minute. The DCEDC Attainable Housing Committee that we're working on, we refreshed that. That's actually been going on at DCEDC since 2000. And it took a little breather with a COVID and some staff changes, but we're back at it. And that is because there are so many different entities that are working toward housing in Door County. So to make sure we're coordinated, but also that the employer's feedback is getting to these organizations so that they understand, and also that we can leverage each other's talents. So if it's attracting developers, if it's trying to get dollars for infrastructure, all of those things, different parties can help different parts of that. So we want to make sure we're coordinated in that effort. And then coming in 2024, 2025, we're really focusing, as I said, on that workforce development conference, on what are some upskilling opportunities, what are maybe some employees that have opportunities to grow in their roles that might help our employers. So we're going to be focusing on that with our partnerships with NWTC, as well as the high schools and the Youth Apprentice Program. I talked about the Regional Broadband Summit, October 24th. 2024, that save the date will be coming out this week. And that is going to be the whole new North region. So we'll have it in Door County here at Stone Harbor, and working with Jessica and the New North team on that. The New North is our regional economic development partner. And we really hope to celebrate some of the successes that have been done in broadband, but also to encourage others to continue on the path, as well as to encourage others that maybe aren't at the forefront to understand why that would be important. So that's what that'll be. The 2025 Sturgeon Bay Developer Tour, that is to attract developers to Sturgeon Bay. We work with the city. We do it every 2 years. And it is probably going to focus somewhat on housing, but also commercial. We know we have a lot of amenities that people want, more in Sturgeon Bay than I'd say up north, but we have, and also down south, that we have folks that they want new kind of retail and amenities that are coming into town. I'm working with Sturgeon Bay on some of that work. I know a popular thing is a West Side grocery store. Can't promise you that now, but we're working toward, what we need to do to get there. So that's some of the things that we're working on with this. Also, those challenges with barriers to workforce, housing, childcare, those sort of things. And then lastly, Ken, on communications and engagement, we have promoted our businesses. We've facilitated more than 50 earned media opportunities for DCEDC and Door County businesses, putting some of those pictures there with broadcast articles, podcasts that have gotten them to be in front of the community to make sure they're aware of what's going on in their own backyard in these businesses, but also for employment understanding as well. So we've created some original videos and done social media messaging, promoting existing and new businesses and expansion projects. And why this is important, social media and some of this marketing activity, is it's really getting our story out there, that people are being able to know what we're doing. We've actually had a lot of, lately we've done a heightened social media push, and we've gotten a lot of calls from residents saying, hey, I saw you're doing this. Can I get some more information on it? So it really does help connect us with the resident as well as the business community. So coming in 2024, 2025, we have 2 new engagement opportunities, the workforce development community, as well as committee, as well as the public policy committee that's going to inform what we're doing at legislative days, and not just be a one and done, but really understand what our needs are in the community for a public policy push. And so that we look forward to getting up and running. We are partnering with the state as well as Destination Door County on talent attraction marketing efforts. So Destination Door County, as our tourism arm of the county, really has some of those resources and some of those marketing plays to be able to say, come visit our community. And what we're working with them is that come stay in our community, come live here. And so they are great partners in helping us create some of that collateral, and we're working on how to do that. Julie Gilbert, who is the CEO, has been appointed to the Governor's Council on Workforce Innovation to represent tourism. And so that is a really good in for us to be like, okay, here's some of the resources, we can leverage those to get new residents, and also other things where people will stay here and be a part of our workforce and part of our community. So some of the engagement events that we want to provide for community on issues to the community, we are working on, like I said, the broadband as well, conference, as well as the workforce development, as well as housing summit. Our workforce attainability committee, our housing attainability committee is chaired by Mariah Good. And so that has been really helpful to kind of coordinate everything. We are working on doing some kind of summit maybe in the spring of 2025. So some more of those to get the community to know about information that what we're doing, and then to also attract developers and so forth. So I've done a lot of talking. I just really appreciate the time that I got to talk to you about what we're doing and programs that we've had. And thank you for your support and your over 3 decades of partnership with the organization. And I would love to have any chance to get your feedback. I certainly have lots of time with Ken and Todd and Jeff, and would love to be able to get all of your feedback through them or through me, and just invite you to contact me with anything, but I appreciate your time today.
Okay, are there any questions for Michelle? Benny?
Thank you for your presentation. The question I had, or a couple of them, were, I'll be quick though, is,
Sure.
are you seeing with the work that you've done with businesses, with the gap funding, are you funding any property purchase? Because I've been hearing, at least in Northern Door, part of a challenge for new businesses is actually purchasing property because it's so expensive. And so like the model 20 or 30 years ago where someone could purchase something and then turn it into a business is getting to be really difficult because of property shortages. So do the gap funds, would they include purchasing property?
Yes, they would.
Okay.
They would do that. And usually, that's a big number. So but they would go toward that. So, we would like to, if you have anybody in mind, have them call us, because what we'd like to do is have them communicate with us and then talk to a particular bank if there would be one that we could help them facilitate the relationship with. We do that a lot if they don't have a relationship with a bank. There's also a program that's called the Coin Loan Program that we administer as well, and I forgot to bring that up. That is for businesses who really are not able to be funded by a bank. But they are really looking, it's the Door County Community Foundation, really looking to get that money out there. Property purchase is a huge number, so that would have to probably be a capital stack of some point, but our funds can go toward that.
And my second part of that question is, does the inventory of available rental include business rental, or is it all residential?
Like commercial
Yes.
rental? Good question. We have a kind of a pulse on the business rental, and we are able to, if someone like contacts us, but we don't have that out there anywhere. So that's kind of a shortage that we have. We do know if somebody called me, I could say, okay, here's it. And they do that often. We do a lot of site selection work. So if they say, I'm looking for, a space in Sturgeon Bay with a kitchen, we can help them with that. But we, don't have a really good inventory online, something we're working on. Yeah.
Okay. And my last question about that was, is there, are you finding, and maybe this is something that'll come out in your data report that's coming forward, but are you finding tools to keep workforce housing or to attain workforce housing? Like there's affordable housing we hear about, there's workforce, but then if affordable isn't saved for workforce, then it goes to someone for a vacation home, which is
Yeah.
okay. I'm just like, how do you keep it workforce by,
Yes.
does someone have to have a job here?
Mhm.
Or
And it's really difficult because there's a lot of constraints legally on what to do.
Yes.
But I think the Sturgeon Bay model, they're trying to replicate the model of the Geneva Ridge single family home. And that has been where they've been able to keep the lots for it's deed restricted basically for workforce housing. So you have to be employed by a Door County business or organization. So there are models like that we are trying to replicate around the community. And that is a challenge that, we're trying to first understand it kind of with this inventory, who's renting. And that's why this relationship we're getting with these managers is kind of like, what are you seeing? We can get a lot of anecdotal data about who's renting these apartments and that kind of thing. We have found that there are quite a few of the workforce that are getting them. So that is really great. But there are some creative things we can do. Also, Mariah's very involved in the Door County Housing Partnership, which that land trust model, which will keep it the affordable piece. And there are restrictions for keeping out like short-term rentals and things like that. So there are creative ways of doing that we are trying to push.
thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much for
Thank
your report. Oh, Todd, I'm sorry, you had a
Yep.
question?
Yeah, just a comment.
Okay.
So for those of you on the county board that may be new in your seats, the county is a fairly significant financial supporter of DC EDC. And as you can see by many of the buttons that Michelle and her group push, it's money that's very well spent. It's not only the county, it's a, public-private. Of course, I was in the private world before I came here and retired, but there's a lot of the major businesses that finance, that, whole operation also. But as you can see, they do a lot with not a real lot. It is a finite amount of money that they operate on. They don't have a huge staff, but they touch a lot of the buttons that are extremely necessary for the county. And I want to say, from my gathering, I think our economic development group here in Door County is as good as many in the state, if not one of the shining stars in the state. Michelle took over a little bit of a mess a couple of years ago. She's done a marvelous job of righting that ship and putting together a good staff that does a lot of good things on behalf of our businesses and our community. So I want to thank you for what you do.
Thank you. I greatly appreciate it and appreciate your time. Thank you, Todd, and call me if you need anything. Thanks.
Oh, you?
Thank you. As the chair of the broadband committee, I get to steal a lot of Michelle's time, so I'm grateful for your leadership. Relative to the coming attractions you talked about for legislative days in 2025, any thoughts that you want to leave with us relative to things that we might be thinking about for when we go to Madison next spring?
Yes. Well, I think the first thing that's top of my mind is that things are going to change. They could, right? So we've still got some things that we need to figure out for election purposes and kind of where we are and what the agenda is set. But I think we know what our issues are and what we need to do, the basic issues. So I know we need things like everything that's related to workforce, which is really our biggest challenge. So how do we that's my focus. And I'm sure Ken has some thoughts about that too. And I look forward to getting those, but it's really all those things that are workforce. And I think that there are a lot of creative things we do rather than, funding is important, right? So we all, to certain things that we need, but I think there are some creative partnerships that are going to be important for us to figure out. How do we maybe get some of the employers involved in some of what we're doing, some of the solutions. And so that's really kind of what I have at this point. But what I invite you to do is kind of be part of this committee and see how we can kind of learn what's happening from our representatives and then go from there.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, well, thank you again, Michelle. We'll do the other report now on the broadband. Thank you, Jessica.
Morning. Good morning. We'll adjust this for my height. So I just wanted to come with you with an update because there is some federal funding that we have all been waiting for that will kind of start to be being dispersed in tranches starting this fall. So for those of you that are new that haven't heard me before or maybe just don't really completely understand what's going on, the BEAD funding, which is was funded under the bipartisan bill, the infrastructure law, which was $42 billion, awarded Wisconsin a little over $1 billion in broadband funding, which is being handled and addressed by the Wisconsin Broadband Office. So the goal is obviously to deploy fiber to the premise broadband networks throughout the nation. And there will be some focuses to fill in the gaps for areas where the cost is going to be too high for that. The Public Service Commission, which the Wisconsin Broadband Office is under, allocates this, reviews it, and has been answering to the entity, the NTIA, the National Telecommunications and Information Association on this. And sub-grantees for this are the states. So this is a little overview of where we are as a county. To date, there has been $8.2 million for fiber to the premise broadband expansion grants that have been awarded throughout the county for over 11,000 locations. The green areas that you're seeing here are areas that either have had these grants awarded to them, or these municipalities have made choices to have public-private partnerships in place and self-fund those networks under their municipal boundaries in partnership with the internet service provider of their choice. Those yellow areas are municipalities that have chosen internet service provider partners and do have eligible locations that will receive funding more than likely sometime this fall and throughout the winter. They'll make decisions on where that money will be dispersed on those locations in those municipalities. Some of those municipalities are providing matching funds for those projects, and some of them are just working with the providers to support what their project unit bids will be in those areas with letters of support, and we will have resolutions of support. The orange areas that you're seeing just have not made decisions and do not have partnerships in place. And then the city of Sturgeon Bay is considered a served city. So there's no funding availability. There may be a few straggler locations on the outskirts that will receive funding. So this is a preliminary map that the Wisconsin Broadband Office released. The finalized map that will show the eligible locations should be published either sometime in September, or they're saying roughly by the first week in October. That finalized map is going to determine what locations are eligible for funding throughout the state, and it will create what is called project units, which the Wisconsin Broadband Office refers to as basically Legos. So they're building kind of little Lego units throughout the entire state that internet service providers will make decisions on bidding on. So they basically will kind of review this map. What is close to networks we have? Do we have something that's close enough for us to build this out in a cost-effective manner? And they will bid on these Lego units throughout the state. So we should hopefully have that sometime September, October. So this is the estimated timeline that the Wisconsin Broadband Office also released. The green arrow that I have on the left there shows basically what the timeline will possibly be that the first auction will open, and the timeline that those providers have to put in bids in areas. So our focus here in the county is fiber to the premise. So that is going to show all of the project units that are available throughout Door County. And the providers will be determining where they want to bid on project units throughout the county, what Lego blocks they want to pick up on. And they will be having matching funds available from some of those municipalities on their bids that will go in also to the Wisconsin Broadband Office for those projects. So currently there is a window that is open that all the ISPs have to apply for in order to be an invited entity, because they have to go through background checks, they have to go through financial checks, and they have to be approved to bid on the locations. So an invited entity is going to be an internet service provider that has passed all those background checks and is financially viable and has proven that they have deployed throughout the state, they've had grant awards throughout the state, and they have viable networks, and they will, by accepting funding under this program, they'll be able to build out and maintain the networks. Sure. Underserved and unserved locations throughout Door County that could be receiving funding in the area. And by doing some math regionally, we have these discussions under New North and our broadband planning. We did simple math on there's X amount of locations throughout the state. This is how much funding there is. There could be about $4,000 per address that is funded from the Wisconsin Broadband Office to supplement those ISPs to deploy. This can change wildly And this is just kind of simple math to look at, that we could receive up to about 30 million of funding throughout the county in those yellow areas and some straggler locations randomly throughout the area. So one of the most important pieces in supporting those bids from internet service providers and the partnerships with the municipalities that the state broadband office is asking for and NTIA is asking for are resolutions from county boards supporting bids that will be going in. So at some point, when we have that finalized map and internet service providers are making decisions on what they're going to bid on, having those discussions with those municipalities, they are going to need some support. The financial support that we provide is already established under our broadband grant applications that the municipalities have access to, and that funding they can apply for and utilize for those. So what we would be looking for is resolutions to support those bids in those municipalities with those internet service providers. The UW Extension staff in the state works hand in hand with the Wisconsin Broadband Office, and they help do kind of the educational piece that's pushed out to the state and materials for people. So they are working with the Wisconsin Counties Association to provide a guidance or a template of sort with language and information that they would like to see in resolutions. That's kind of specific, that's pushed down from NTIA and the Wisconsin Broadband Office so that they can review those resolutions and know and confirm that we are paying attention to what's going on in our area, and we do want that provider to provide a fiber internet service in and a network throughout our area. So I'm waiting for some feedback and guidance from them based on the estimated timelines that we're seeing. If the auctions open roughly around November, I would be coming to you in October with some draft resolutions ready to go, knowing that I'm having conversations with those specific municipalities and who their chosen partners are. And they have told us we will be bidding on these specific project units in this area. So there could be multiple resolutions that we're looking for support for to have you sign. So I want to make sure that this isn't a surprise to you. I'm not coming to you and you don't understand what I'm asking you for. And we could be in a time crunch depending on if that auction timeline sticks to what their estimated timeline is, or if it pushes out a little bit. So are there any questions at all? Vinny?
Can you explain quick, just the map with the blue specks on it, which was the areas that could be funded?
Yes.
Through the BEAD grant. Now, is it the whole thing or is it pieces? For example, Town of Gibraltar has a resolution already to fund it to every door. Would this make up for pieces that are more expensive to get to or are just so hard to pay for because of their location? And would you apply for it piece by piece or as a whole municipality at once? Can it come after the fact of the town's resolution and fund what hasn't been built but is in the works to be built?
So I'll kind of address those separately. So the blue and the red that you're seeing on there is showing you unserved and underserved locations. The broadband office has determined in our state that those auction pieces are going to cover both at the same time. They're not going to go with unserved first and underserved. It's all going to be handled at the same time. Those project units are going to be determined by the broadband office. So their map will show you a project unit could be one location that is a straggler that maybe, let's say Charter came through and someone is on a 20-acre parcel and they're really far back and they said, no, it's too expensive, we're not coming to you. So a project unit could be, okay, that one location to make sure it's pulled in and it has accessibility like everybody else, or it could be a multiple locations of apartment complexes, multi-dwelling units. It could be up to a couple hundred locations. They're going to try to make the best sense of it as they can. and not say, okay, it would not be an entire municipality. It's going to be pieces of Gibraltar broken up. So, okay, if we're going down this 2-mile road and there's 5 homes, this makes sense. We're going to pull in these 5 homes as a project unit. And then move on to a different section where we're going to go into maybe this condo association. So the ISPs themselves will have to determine what they want to bid on
Yeah.
and how they want to make those decisions. The money there is specifically to address extremely high cost and hard to reach areas and fill the gap. When we do that math and that breakdown on the easy math, the guesstimate math, that 4,000 per location, it's not going to stay solid there. Because you're going to see, some locations are gonna cost an ISP maybe this is $1,000 to get to, and some could be $20,000 to get to. They're only going to get a certain amount of funding because this has to go across the state as far as it possibly can. The broadband office has a due diligence to accept the most affordable bid.
So last part of this question is, so the resolution that you're looking for from the county board, is that going to go unit by unit, municipality by municipality, or the whole county at once?
It's going to go probably more by ISP, like
Okay.
we support whoever it is, Bertram Communications or Ensight Communications or Frontier or AT&T in the project units that they are bidding on in Door County as a whole.
Okay.
To make it be less brain damage would be the best way to put that. Because otherwise, if it's going to be by project unit or by municipality, we could just end up with, 40 different resolutions, where if we are going to broadly support, we have worked as a county with this provider and they have worked with X amount of municipalities in our area and we are comfortable with them, we can broadly support Frontier's bidding in Liberty Grove, and Brightspeed is bidding in Southern Door. They're mostly staying to what is their incumbent local exchange carrier footprint, their phone line footprint that they are in, and because we have established municipal relationships. So for us, it will be a little easier and more straightforward. For other counties, it's going to be a lot more challenging. Sure. Claire?
Claire?
When they're trenching for fiber, forgive me if this is a goofy question, but would the property owner have the chance to bury the rest of the utilities?
When they're trenching for fiber, they're trenching for fiber.
Okay.
And they're, we always want to support dig once and allow other conduit to be put in there. It's a matter of, will that provider allow you to do that
Mhm.
while they're on your property? So it's a matter of probably having a direct conversation with them. Hey, you're trenching on my property. Can I put extra conduit in this trench for this? If it's a new build, that makes sense. If it's an older build, that's going to be a lot more challenging to get them to allow that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Oh, okay. Well, a couple more questions maybe, but we'd like to move on. It's been an hour.
Could you go to the map with the Door County on it, yellow and so forth?
Sure. That would be, I think, the second slide, Ken, maybe third.
There, going past, there it is.
Yep.
Okay. So my first question is, auction implies open to anybody.
Yes.
So your point of the resolution would be to support a specific entity, which every municipality so far has picked a specific entity.
Mhm.
But that doesn't guarantee that that's gonna happen, correct? That would just be another checkpoint.
It doesn't guarantee that that provider is going to get the bid. Is that what you're meaning? Yes, correct.
And then the other question would be, and I was hoping that Clark's Lake was showing up. If you remember, we had dealt with Clark's Lake, which is part in Sebastopol, part in Jacksonport. That's a cluster of buildings crossing 2 municipal border lines. Are those blocks, Lego blocks, laid out in that configuration, or do we take consideration of municipal border lines?
They don't take consideration of municipal boundaries. They will take consideration of county and tribal boundaries. But if you take note, like Clark Lake falls into the green area, which is already taken care of. So Jacksonport already has the relationship with Frontier and Sebastopol has AT&T, and both were awarded grants. So anything that's in green will not go up for auction.
Right, but I was using that as an example. so
Okay.
not Nassau, Gardner.
It will go across municipal boundaries. So those ISPs are going to have to make decisions when they're reviewing what those project units are, if they're okay stepping outside of first their ILEC footprint, their own carrier line footprint, if they want to do that. The municipal boundaries issue is not something that we can fix or address. That's just the way the broadband office has made those decisions.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I'll see you in October.
Okay, we'll go back to the county administrator report.
Sure. So for this month, it's actually just some minor updates to it, and just for our time's sake and other items we have to address, I don't have any specific updates unless there's any questions.
Okay, seeing no questions, pending business, we have nothing there. The resolutions. Resolution 2024-40, Supervisor Norton.
I'll make the motion to approve resolution number 2024-40. It's a resolution in support of state investment for mental health funding. The info on it was pretty explanatory. Basically, the county, the state, and the country are way behind on putting money into mental health. And Joe was here at some point. He probably still is if
Yep.
anyone has questions.
Joe, you have any comments to the resolution, or you think it's pretty straightforward? Okay, there's a motion by Supervisor Norton, a second by Supervisor Shaw. Need a vote on the board on this one? Okay. We can do this by a voice vote. All those in favor signify by aye. Opposed? Okay. Resolution 2024-41.
I would move to approve resolution number 2024-41 for the transfer of non-budgeted funds for the purchase of a replacement highway department vehicle. It would be an amount not to exceed $23,106.
Okay, are there any questions regarding the need for this transfer? Okay. Okay, there was a motion by Supervisor Miller, second by Supervisor Gauger to approve the resolution. We need to go to the voter board on this one. A 2/3 vote is required. That passes on a vote of 19 yes with 0 no and 2 absent. Okay, resolution 2024-42.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would again move to approve resolution number 2024-42 for the transfer of non-budgeted funds for an airport fuel processing pedestal in an amount not to exceed $30,000.
Okay, any questions on the need or the urgency of this? Okay, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was just wondering, I'm not on this committee. I just wonder if it was discussed or obviously there's an issue with lightning. Airports are big, wide open places, so lightning is probably pretty common there. I mean, are we doing something to mitigate lightning strikes? I mean, it's a pretty expensive repair.
Yeah, I can, based on the discussion we had, this new thing that we're getting for them would in fact accommodate lightning strikes. There's some kind of a surge protector that would be attached to it. So it should provide them what they need for those issues.
Okay, on this motion, we'll need a 2/3 vote of support. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, who else has got? Okay. It didn't show up on mine. Okay, Supervisor Anagel.
To speak in reference to the lightning strike, I brought that up quite obviously. I'm quite experienced in dealing with that kind of installation, and quite honestly, I was very concerned the fact that this item is struck as often as it has been. And I was assured that the intent is we're gonna be doing some work at the buildings there to improve the ability to move that around as well. So lightning strikes get redirected to other less sensitive grounding sources.
Okay, there was a motion to approve resolution 2024-42 by Supervisor Miller, the second by Supervisor Fisher. We need to use the voter board on this. We need a 2/3 majority. So. Okay. This resolution passes with a vote of 19 yes, 0 no, and 2 absent. Okay, resolution 2024-43, Supervisor Gunlickson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to make a motion to approve resolution 2024-43, which is an adoption of the Employee Emergency Action Plan. Self-explanatory of what it is defining, and if anybody has any further questions or comments, I know Jeb is here from Emergency Management to talk about it.
Jeb, could you offer some insight? It's a kind of a broad plan covering the employees and the public.
Good morning. The Emergency Employee Action Plan has been in the works for some time. What it does is addresses several emergency situations that an employee might face while in the workplace. So we've developed this to give some general basic guidelines of what to do in each circumstances. And we've broken the plan up to be addressed month by month on a monthly basis. So employees will review a certain section or an incident of the emergency each month, and those guidelines that go with it. We've also supplied a few trainings that go into a little bit more in depth on a certain subject matters. So this will give employees a better sense of security in the workplace. And what we're hoping to do today is show that the county stands behind this plan and workplace safety in general. If there's any questions about specifics, I can answer those.
Supervisor Bolton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sort of just tangentially related. This is obviously very specific to an employee coming into work, being here during the day. I was just curious, one of the things in sort of the general responsibilities, talking about how Facilities and Parks Department is responsible for, kind of overall systems. And I'm just wondering what kind of conversations or support or thought or planning has gone into with the Parks Department being kind of having that overall role, just thinking about space weather events and possible grid failure or grid troubles with, large scale events like that. One of those things that, obviously is beyond anyone on the planet's control and yet could have pretty severe consequences to our electronic grid.
Great question. Those circumstances kind of fall outside of this plan.
Right.
So definitely an emergency that we would take serious action on with operating our emergency operations center and working with our partners in emergency response. But as far as the individual employee, what we want them to know in those certain circumstances, that kind of falls a little bit out of it. This kind of addresses more generalized workplace environments, but it does not address everything, and it's not supposed to. So this is just kind of a general first step in addressing employee safety and laying out some additional guidelines for them to follow.
I'm just looking for, hoping you guys are at least considering that when you look at that. I understand this, again, this is a tangential concern, but obviously one that it bodes us well to be prepared for. Because, when that happens, if that happens, and I'm not trying to be predictive, but we are coming into the solar maximum. So the chance of X flares goes up, exponentially over the next 2 years and then dies down again for 11 years. But if something like that were to happen, people are really gonna be relying on the county. The county's gonna be carrying the lion's share of that burden if something like that happens. So I just want us to be thinking about it.
No, absolutely. And this is what this office does. You know, we think about those worst case scenarios on a daily basis. So,
Thanks.
any other questions?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A lot of this, I think, is kind of geared towards, you know, a workplace, office kind of environment. You know, a lot of our folks are in the field. They're working in parks, they're cutting grass where they might run on into a disgruntled parcel owner that doesn't want their milkweed, you know, mowed. And, you know, for instances where our county employees might be involved in those situations, is there any guidance that we can provide relative to, you know, a lot of times they're out in the field working and making sure that they're protected?
Great question. And that's not only an issue that people face out in the field, but also here in this building as well. So that is a certain incident that we do focus on, is how to de-escalate those things. But, you know, first things first, what we always suggest is call 911. Get an officer there as that intermediate to de-escalate the situation, to aid that employee in helping them with that situation, because it is a tense and volatile situation.
Great, thank you.
Okay, we have a motion by Supervisor Gunlickson, second by Supervisor Shaw, to approve Resolution 2024-43, the adoption of the Employee Emergency Action Plan. We go to the voter board, please. Yeah, I'm Graham. No, that's okay. I didn't. Since it's a county-wide plan, I would like to see the vote on it. Okay, that passes with a vote of 19 yes, with 0 no and 2 absent. Okay, Resolution 2024-44, Supervisor Thase.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to present Resolution 2024-44 for approval. It is the Library Miller Art Museum Building Occupancy Agreement. This has been worked on for several months by our administrator and our corporate counsel in negotiating with the museum group. As you can see, it allows for a 5-year agreement, which could extend to 6. The 6th year would actually be somewhat of a rental agreement if they're not into the or out of the library by that time. As you've probably seen in the media, the museum seems to have found some parcels within the city that they may be looking at, and I think they're moving forward with that. It provides for $100,000 per year, up to 5 years. And it can be accelerated should the museum be a little bit quicker than what maybe the agreement allows. Obviously, there was conversation about maybe a shorter term for this agreement, but as the negotiations went and the puts and the takes were put into place, this is what we arrived at, and the admin committee last week unanimously supported this. So if there's any questions, I'm sure that Administrator Pavic could answer those. But that's what we're here to hold on.
Mm-hmm. It's probably been a couple of years, a couple of months with the agreement, but the discussions with the Miller and the city have been ongoing for probably 3 years or so. Back to when Supervisor Kohout was vice chair, and then I filled in some of those discussions after her tenure. So, any questions on that?
Yes, okay.
Okay, Nissa?
Okay, so my biggest one is there's a Wisconsin state statute 43.58. The library board also shall have exclusive charge, control, and custody of all lands, buildings, money, or other property devised, bequeathed, given or granted to, or otherwise acquired or leased by the municipality for library purposes. But none of this has gone in front of the library board when the Miller is inside the library building. So one question I have is, how does this affect the state statute? Since library has to follow what the state wants.
Yeah.
So that was one of the discussions we had early on, when we were even having some of the discussions with negotiations. And as you're aware, we try to keep the library board along in terms of where we've been, in terms of those negotiations. But in Sean's view, and at that time, even before with Grant, the original agreement was set up through the county board. So in essence, why it's considered the library building, I guess we just consider it as a separate tenant, not as part of the library itself. So that's the logic that we're using for the agreement. So while it's the library's occupying part of the space, the Miller is also occupying part of the space as well, but
But
we're
it's the
considering them
library's
separate.
building.
They can occupy the same building as this, but the original MOUs and everything related to it goes all the way back to 1975 and it was originally established with the county board. So
My other question is, this is kind of connected to a space study that hasn't been done yet. So my question is, if the space study hasn't been done yet, where does the museum come into it? You know, the library has talked about expanding and doing different things and stuff like that. But we don't have the study to prove that the library necessarily needs that space, more space, or how much space in general.
So we've had two HGA studies that were done, and both of those are implying the addition of additional space. The big thing that prompted it going back 3+ years was when the Miller Art Museum, and at that time, money from the Library Foundation, they commissioned a study through HGA to look for either redesigning the library or actually relocating the library. And that's what prompted some of those initial discussions. And it was through those discussions going back to both, again, when former Supervisor Kuhalt was there and also David, that it was really determined that long-term, the Miller's vision was separate in terms of where we were heading in terms of the library, but also what they wanted in terms of future space. So that's kind of what prompted the negotiations going forward that way. So I think part of it's the path for the Miller, as you've seen in the plans with the city in terms of their growth and expansion. But again, part of our discussion was also just based off the needs that were identified both through HGA, although they have not been finalized by any means. Both of those, the first study and then the study that updated those figures both show the need for additional space for the library.
Okay, I understand that. I'm not sure every supervisor though realizes that the library board itself is not for this. We've discussed at different meetings, the library board is very, very against removing the Miller. So I'm not sure if everybody understands that. I mean, I understand that different committees are for it and want to change it, but the library board itself is not for this. And that's all. for
Could
now.
could you explain the makeup of the library board?
Sure.
I can tell otherwise. It's
No.
2 people representing the county, which would be myself and Morgan, before it was Megan Lundahl when she was on county board. There are 2 people that represent the city of Sturgeon Bay there in city council. There is 1 person that represents the school library system, so the K through 12. Currently, it's somebody from Gibraltar. Previously, it was somebody from Sebastopol. There is 1 person who lives in Forestville. She represents the southern part of the county for the library system, where she's just a citizen. And then somebody who represents the northern end of the county, Bob Dixon, who is also Miriam Erickson's son-in-law. Miriam Erickson was Gibraltar librarian for ever. I mean, I don't know how many years, but a lot. I want to say like 50, but probably not that much. So that's that's the makeup. So it's 2 county, 2 city, 1 school rep, 1 southern of the county rep, and 1 northern of the county rep.
I mean, if you want me to, just to comment on that, I mean, it's the library board through this entire process has kind of stated, you know, part of their vision was the same vision that came together in 1975. Was that, you know, should we have the space available? There is some, I guess, unique, collaboration as always has occurred, and having a museum next to the library is is valuable from their standpoint. But again, through those discussions and negotiations, again, I think they're just both on different projections on where they need for our space and future resources or investments that are needed into the facility. And I think that's where the decision was at that point in time to have those negotiations and actually separate from that standpoint. So I concur with what you're saying, but I think that's been one of the things that we've discussed for the past 3 years in terms of that different vision going forward.
Yeah, the meetings that I have participated in, that seemed to be the understanding that the Miller needed more space. We're looking at a different vision than maybe the county was, and the county does, control the physical space and the funding for the library staff as well as the maintenance. And so we agreed it was best to separate. The agreement of the payment was negotiated down some. It's now at 500,000 from the city and 500,000 from the county. And the Miller has agreed to those terms. And that's what we're presenting today.
Maybe worthwhile also that the city participated in negotiations and they have a separate arm of agreement that is probably somewhere close to what we've had right here. So that would the mayor and the administrator, I would suppose, participated.
Yep, they were part of the process and they're actually part of this agreement. So the 3 parties all have to come to agreement. And the city is probably just behind us in terms of the process, but they're bringing forward the same agreement through their process.
Okay, Mark.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a clarification on the bottom of page 2, under section G, contingency planning, and I apologize if I forget if we talked about this during admin, or I'm just looking at the line where it says, the foundation shall make rent payments to the county and city in the amount of $3,500 per month. Does that mean they're paying the city $3,500 and the county $3,500, or that $3,500 is split between both of us?
Split.
Okay, and is that clear enough in the right, in this statement to make that, I mean, as long as it's clear, and if the people that are in the know are okay with that, I'm not asking to change anything, it's just, I was reading it going, I don't remember what that number was, or, so just, thank you for the clarification.
Yep. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else?
Vinny.
Vinny?
This is for me and anyone else that isn't familiar with this as much as the groups making the decision. So when you said the agreement, was it between the admin committee and then the mayor and if it wasn't the library board, I'm trying to figure out who was making the decision, or where the discussion began, if it didn't begin with the library board, or if it began with the library board 3 or 5 or even 10 years ago. Why wasn't it brought back to the library board presently? Because if they're elected members, they're new representation, I'm assuming, and it should go through, wouldn't it go through the library board also? And the second part of my question of that is, how is it, what is the equity in it if compared to other libraries? Do other libraries, I'm trying to understand why we would be giving $500,000 to a nonprofit for leaving a library agreement. Would we be doing that at the Crest? Does the Crest have its own nonprofit that's located in the library that does all their programming and has an art museum in the middle? I'm just trying to understand the comparables of the decisions with other libraries in the same system, which I'm assuming are also going through the library board. Thank you. Whatever background, I don't have that information at all.
Sure. I'll try to divide them up into 2 questions. So the first one, just as far as context, when we first started negotiations, again, a supervisor, Kuhut, was part of the process. And we had, at that point in time, we had met, that's when the library board and the Miller board had made their projects known the prior year. So we sat down at that point in time and discussed where we wanted to go. And that's where the committee was, and that's where we had some of those initial discussions of who should take the lead in terms of the negotiations. And that's where we had determined at that time that the county would be the lead versus the library board from the assets, because the building itself is actually owned by both the city and the county. So that's just how that came together. Again, when we had put that together, that was communicated to the library board at that time in that process. And I think we've done at least updates pretty consistently when we had meetings. There's a lot of times where we stalled, but we tried to provide updates to the library board in terms of that progress. In terms of the reasoning of why for the payments, again, as the county board chair did mention, there's been discussions on what that number should have been and what's the appropriate way to approach it. And again, you're gonna get different stories on how you discuss it, but if you look at the history, there is some feeling that the Gerhardt family was significant in terms of actually bringing the library to fruition in that initial investment, both in the sale and the property itself, but then also being able to raise money. And there was also money that was contributed by the, at that time it'd be the Miller Arts Center, both for an addition and also the elevator. And if you look at those investments, and you look at that total investment overall, there were numbers that they were, I guess, what they consider of value. And again, there's never been a lease agreement. So you try to figure out, well, we never paid a lease, but you also made investments. So we did math, we presented different numbers, and we try to settle on a number that would be fair. And that's where the logic came from, again, because they are, again, their own entity. So again, and that's the type of questions that we were concerned about is, what other relationships do we have out there, and what questions would they have in terms of, well, should we get money then too as well? But again, our logic is based off the original relationship and also their original investment into the building that were never clearly defined as a, let's say, it would have been really clear if back then we set up a lease and it was a, like you'd say it's like a triple net lease, if you're familiar with that. But that was never actually done in terms of making that clarity. So that's why through the negotiations, we try to define that and really try to, and again, the city played a large role in this in trying to make sure that we do value the arts, both not only in the city, but within the county. So we're trying to walk that fine line, and that's how it came together.
Just a brief comparison, and I don't know this. We can't do this right now, but the Crest is a new library, which was independently partially funded through a foundation that has a nonprofit entity that has employees that's a part of their programming. So it's 75 to now. It's obviously a big span of time. We may have more policies or more rental agreements, or I don't know how the Crest is run, but I guess they've done a really good job. And I think that those partnerships should be encouraged. And I'm not saying this is discouraging that, but I guess, as communities, Bailey's Harbor is that later asking for more hours, and as communities update their libraries, how do we just take it case by case? And do we have rental agreements with other nonprofits? And it seems like it's worked. So yeah.
And I forgot that last part of the question. So for our branches, it's a little bit more unique in that sense. In essence, for our branches, we're provided the space, and then we occupy the space that's provided to us as the library. So it's a little bit different. Whereas this is the building that both the city and the county own. And then we actually provide that space then to the library to use. So that's where it's different. In those other, like the Crest, for example, we don't own that asset. They merely say, this is the space that we're allocating for you to use as the library, and we occupy that space.
Which then kind of answers why the library board is involved with programming and what the library space may look like, but not the building itself, because the library board doesn't own any of the buildings. Right?
Yeah, but the statute, that's where it gets kind of weird, because the statutes are clear. So once we provide the asset then comes under the authority of the library board to operate. So it's kind of one of those lines that's kind of odd, right? We're partners in this together. But again, once it crosses that line, then the library board has the ultimate authority according to state statutes. So I mean, and again, we're not at all adversarial. We have a good relationship with the library board, and I speak with Bob. But really our control is really in the money that we provide and also the space that we provide. So once you provide that space, they can use it the way they deem fit, but we also allocate that space and we allocate those funds. So we have to work together, but once it crosses that line, it's in their court.
Thank you for the answers.
It's hard to look back at something that occurred in 1973 or 75 as the county board was trying to build a new library along with the city, and the Miller family gave some property, some other property, which is equated to dollars that went into the building of the library. And as to Chairman Lino had these discussions going on, and when we eventually arrived at what we thought was a contract or close to a contract that could be approved by county board, it then came to the administrative committee for review and then the final draft. Any other questions on this? That's a little complicated, but Nissa?
Vinny, to answer some of your stuff, so the library board didn't want to terminate the contract with the Miller. Also in asking what happens with other libraries with the same situation, there aren't any other situations like this. So across the state, it's the library's library. Having the Miller Art Museum in there, you can't compare it to other libraries because it just doesn't exist. That's not a thing in other places. So that was something we looked into is what have other places done? Well, they haven't done anything because it's not like anywhere. The fact that the art museum is in there, you can't compare it to any other system, county, whatever, because they don't have them. So it's unique.
Any other questions? Okay.
So is the library board then able, after this, if we were to approve this, are they able to come back as a board and say, we would like an art museum in the library? And how would that process work? I mean, if, I guess I felt fine with this, but to think the library board doesn't want it makes me not feel so great about it. And so I'm trying to understand what's next. If the library board was like, we really want to have an art museum in the library as a part of our library functioning, are they able to come back and try to do that? Or are we just chasing the same thing again?
Right, well.
So I guess, go ahead. I would interject
know.
here. It has to do with the space that's available there and what the county will eventually end up doing. But the space for both entities was more than what's likely to be there. You'd be acquiring property and so forth. And I think in discussions, it seemed the Miller was as well off getting to another location, a more visible location, whatever their board would choose to do. And so it seemed advantageous to both.
Okay, thank you.
You have one more.
Supervisor Enikel.
I was resisting commenting, but I'm trying to find a way to say this correctly. I was not born in Door County, but both of my families have been here for many generations. Now, I've lived the majority of my life here. I have, before being on county board, viewed that structure as a property owned by the county and the city with two entities in it, a library and a museum. Neither one of them paying rent, neither one of them having to deal with it. I've always viewed that, and I think the majority of residents and visitors I've talked to have always viewed it as two separate things. So while I respect the intent of the library board, I've never viewed that as the museum underneath their umbrella or the art museum being underneath their umbrella. So for me, this is a no-brainer. This is the property that we own. The library is occupying the piece that they want to occupy. This is a way for us to move on to the next stage. I don't personally believe that since there's no documents that there was ever an intent for the museum to stay there forever. Just because of the way it was. Otherwise, like I've made this argument with other county guard agreements from previous boards, like you say, it is, we don't know, we can't second guess what they thought at that time. So, but ultimately for me, this is a structure the county and the city owns. We're looking to do a change in what we're going to be doing. And this is the way we're accomplishing it. The Miller Art Museum is agreeable to it, which is the entity that it's affected by.
Okay. Okay, so resolution 2024-44, the approval of Library Miller Art Museum building occupancy agreement was a motion by Thace to approve and a second by Morgan. We go to the voter, it's a majority vote, but we'll go to the voter board on it. Okay, that passes with a vote of 17 yes, 2 no, and 2 absent. Okay, the final resolution, 2024-45, Supervisor Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We move to approve resolution number 2024-45 for the capital improvement plan for 2025 through 2029. And Ken, if I remember, at our next session, we are going to have the opportunity to get in more detail with the particulars as well, correct?
Correct. Do we just do a quick
Yeah,
overview?
would you do a quick up?
Sure. So Steve and I can answer any questions. So Steve, why don't you just come up? That way you can be a backup right away. I guess the biggest thing before I even start is just remember this is really the planning document for us that guides the budget. So while you're going to vote on the plan itself, it still gives you an opportunity as a county board to adjust this both at the retreat and also through the budget process. And it does not bind the board for any future years in terms of what we're looking at doing. Okay. So the main objective this is a planning document. This is like your financial planning, right? You're checking in with Steve and I for your financial plans. What do you guys want to accomplish, right? And we're trying to put together that plan to see if we can hit that goal, right? Just like you do your retirement planning. We're kind of doing the same thing, making sure that we can look at the projects we think we need and determine how we can best get there with our finances to get there, okay? So the main goal really to be to look at what are we trying to accomplish for the 2025 budget first, and then look at what are we doing in the future, and do we have anything that's really out there that scares us or that we need to think about how we're going to finance or how we're going to pay for it out of our normal process that we do now in terms of when we do our KIP. So if you recall, we're usually around that 4.6 to 4.7 mark each year. And what we do is we have our core projects, and then we also have projects where we try to set aside money for future projects, hopefully hitting the goal to make that project go in the future. Okay. So with that being said, we do know just in discussions with finance that we're going to try to make some changes in the future years. Obviously, with the funding becoming more targeted, we need to be more refined in terms of how we select and prioritize our projects. So that'll be one of the things we discuss at the retreat. But that being said, if you look at, I'm not sure what's the best way to start. Why don't we just start with table 1? So at this would like to focus on what's being considered in terms of the KIP itself. So again, we have the rural addressing. You can see that is there for $1.4 million for next year. We do have money that we call the library. In the meeting before, or the prior version, it was called library expansion. We took that wording out because again, we're not sure it actually is an expansion. It could just be a complete redone of there was concern that we're implying that we're adding on to the footprint or doing something to it. So right now we're just calling it a library project. We're not sure what that means yet. We hope to have that scoped. But again, we're starting to set aside some of that money for that project. The next big items that you'll see is at the airport. You'll see the north-south runway, and then money that we're actually then setting aside for taxiways and also the perimeter fencing. But is our understanding that the runway is a goal for next year. That's that north-south runway. For highway, you're looking at the projects that they're tentatively planning. I say tentative because what they'll do each year is they go out and they do a road tour. And if there's a road that does not fare well over winter and its scoring changes, we have the ability to then adjust those roads. Our target though is really miles per year. So we try to get around that 18 miles per year to make sure that we're keeping up with our county road maintenance overall. But again, this gives you an idea of what we would like to accomplish for next year. The one item, just because it hasn't gone through the process, I would like to point out is you'll see Shower Road. Right now, that's still in progress of being developed, but that should be coming forward this fall. So again, that's a placeholder. And again, that has to go through all the decision-making to make it happen, but just to point that out. Then if you go under, I should have pointed this out, when you see items in red, those are items that were changed from the very original document, just so you're understanding. It doesn't mean, so you'll see under the facilities, for example, we made some adjustments for the replacement. And again, you'll see it as 550, we adjusted up to 600,000. That's based on what we think are more accurate numbers. For emergency management, it's called the EMD software. That's software that's actually part of their, and Aaron can give you more detail on it, but that's software that they're planning to get a state grant for. And then there's our portion that we need to contribute. Then you'll see under emergency services, you'll see that's been crossed out. Again, that was what they're calling the Egg Harbor / Jacksonport Station. It's not that the project's been canceled, it's just that it's been moved out to 2027. And that'll be an item for us to discuss at the retreat, but also in future sessions of where that priority lies. Yes, sir. Well, we do have some money set aside. I think last year we did put some money aside already. Yep. So we did. There are two items that were, I guess, identified late in the process and are added as part of the plan. And you'll see, if you look at our total expenditures, we're up. And really because of our, it'll get more into the budget stuff. So we're actually higher than the 4.6, but this is one of them. One of them is called the whole body scanner. And again, what this is for is the jail. And what this is for is be able to scan individuals being processed. And again, without getting too graphic, it's hard to determine if they're smuggling in contraband into the jail, and it's becoming a growing trend. Unfortunately, obviously, Door County is a little bit behind on the influx of the amphetamines and stuff that happened in the county. But again, with those, I guess, on the rise, they've had more difficulty with that. And that's one of the things that they wanted to, I guess, add into that. We do have jailers obviously hired that are both male and female that handle those situations appropriately. But again, if we have someone that comes in and we don't have one or the other on duty, then you'd obviously have this tool as a way of doing that. Again, I guess one of the things that was discussed at finance, is this a must have, need have? I guess right now it's a growing trend, so they put it in. And again, this through our budget process, we've had a window where we have it. But again, I guess it's one of those things we can discuss further if you'd like in terms of the budget process itself. Right now, we have it built in to the budget. Tech services, you can see those are pretty much straightforward in terms of that. You'll see a little bit of adjusting. Again, we're trying to, wherever possible, throw some additional money towards the tower. So you'll see it actually went down from 500 to 100,000. But really that one portion is how we're looking at funding the project overall. And again, you'll see that $3.9 million is that federal grant that was applied through by Aaron in emergency services. So hopefully that becomes part of our overall pool that we can use towards that project. Since that money did come in, we did reduce that 500,000 to 100,000 this year. And mainly because we're trying to budget off or balance off the KIP itself a little bit tighter. And that's the other one that came up, was that court systems. That's $350,000. That was known but unknown the level. So we knew that what they call is the Polycom system, which is similar to Zoom, I guess was considered non-compliant. But also the rest of the room in each one of the courts is the technology. If you're familiar, we've upgraded the technology in here. The courts, all their technology still, I don't know if it's original, Jason, but it's probably at least 10 plus years old. And that needs to be replaced. So each one of the courtrooms would be upgraded, and it include we actually have 3 rooms there. We have 2 judges, but actually 3 rooms, but we actually use the third court quite a bit for visiting judges. And right now they don't have any technology in there. So this would be to upgrade all 3 of those courtrooms. Again, we probably could have waited another year, but when we get to the budget retreat, it's one of those things where it's really hard to break up this investment, and you're actually paying more to mobilize and get them to retrofit the room. If you can imagine, we're having to run new wires and poke new holes and all that kind of stuff like that. It's better just to have it done as a project versus breaking it up. So that's why we front loaded that project.
Ken, before leaving that page, could you explain that federal grant, the 3.9 million, is that going to be used in a certain area, towers, radios, or
sure? So
is it
that
designated?
yeah, correct. I'm sorry. So the 3.9 million was a federal allocation. It was supposed to be used towards our public radio system, but they didn't specify what. So we can respond back with what that is. We want to avoid certain things because it kicks in certain regulations, but we're hoping in terms of what we'd like to do is for both the towers and also possibly equipment. We have approximately a 2-year window in which we can spend that money. And both working with Ashley and Jason and Steve, that's what we replied back with, is trying to make it focused towards items that would not kick in, I guess, federal rules such as Davis-Bacon and other items that would be hard for us to do from an audit standpoint.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, this is a question.
Yes.
It's my understanding that we are responsible for the towers. And that it's their responsibility to provide themselves with the appropriate radios or whatever personal that they need to access the tower.
I think that's been a discussion point.
Yep, I think that'll be an item for discussion and something that the county board needs to define. If you talk with, for example, if we go to CATS, there are advisory committee, and if you talk with also the fire departments as well, or the townships, they would see this as a countywide project and we should just bond for it all and pay for it all. We did go, for example, to the Towns Association meeting and inform them that they should be starting to set money aside. You know, to me, it should not be we pay for it all, but there might be a way for us to blend that cost. Maybe we contribute a portion of that or help them with the financing for that. There's some unique ways that we can look at it, but we did inform them that they will be responsible for part of the cost in some form or fashion.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, go ahead.
If you don't mind, if we don't mind, before we get into the big question, or let me just cover the rest of the document just really quick.
Sure.
And then that way I'll help you. If you then go forward, you'll see then the same process occurs for 26, 27, and 28, and also all the way up to 29. Again, I think the one table that kind of helps then, if you go to page 52, what it does is it shows you all of those projects with the years going across the top. And it kind of gives you an idea of where we're looking to make those expenditures. I think that was just kind of a good table. And again, to me, again, if you realize that the big thing that we're trying to do, if you look at that, you want to look at your projects and just make sure that, you know, how are we paying for these projects that we want? And some of those questions are going to be, do we need to do these projects now, or can we put them off, or should they not be a project, or should we change the scope? So the main idea, again, is to use the 25 as a guiding you as far as what you want us to include in the budget to accomplish, right? And we can still adjust that at the retreat. But then really those future years are really should be questions in your mind of, okay, where does this project fit? What's our priority in terms of that project? And if we are going to do it, how are we going to pay for it? And through that 5-year window, are we able to, I guess, do those projects the way we want to, right? We've been, as a county, we're pretty debt averse. So we don't try to put a lot of things into debt, and we try to put money aside to make those projects happen. So again, that's one of those discussions we got to have is when and what do we want to issue debt for, or when do we want to put money aside, and how do we want to allocate those funds? So that's a quick part on the back 5 years. We'll cover probably a little bit more at the retreat, but I guess we'll go to questions if you'd like.
Any questions from anyone?
Yeah.
Any? I'm sorry, I got to learn to use the screen.
I just have one. Can you go over the rural addressing? Because it's the only one that's such a large amount in other. And then I went to table 8 and I don't really understand where that funding's coming from. It just lists a bunch of possibilities. And I'm always like on this one about, because it's something that we had collected a fee for from people before. It's been like 3 or 4 years we've been talking about it. Have we been collecting that fee in the meantime as people need replacement signs, or are we not replacing them at all until we decide this? I'm just trying to see if there's any other capturing of either a grant or half the fee to the landowner or something. So we're not doing the 1.4 million for signs.
Right.
That's just my opinion.
So again, we've been sticking money. This is one of those where we've been sticking money aside to try to make this project happen. Again, the original thought process was again to do, if you look at the sign program itself, it should be self-sustaining. So in other words, signs fades, you give them a letter to do that, and they should be replacing the signs. The question has come back few years ago now from public safety, where it originally started. And I know there's different opinions among the board of whether or not it should occur. But again, it was a consensus at that point in time is that the county should, one, review the standard for the signs, but then also do an update of all the signs in terms of both the color and how the signs are displayed. So we started down that process and it's gone through several iterations, several bids, and the numbers, to be honest, have been higher than anything we expected. And plus, a lot of them have been bids where there's still issues of concern with them being open-ended. In other words, there could be hidden costs at the end where probably the 1.4 is not even enough. So again, if you recall, it's gone back and forth. We did an update probably 3 months ago as a county board to, I guess, we had two committees get together and talk about the standards. I think we built consensus along what those new standards should be. And we're at the point now of, in essence, going out to bid or putting out an RFP for that to occur. And I'll be perfectly honest, even it was brought up at finance, there's a strong possibility that 1.4 may not be enough. Mainly because of the features that we have out in the county as far as bedrock, right?
So do we have any tools to capture any of the fee that we charge people now to replace their sign for this project as a one flat fee for everyone at once? Or what has the committee found with that?
Again, this is based off previous decisions, but when we originally did this, we did have discussions in terms of, do we go through the process of issuing a fee? Now, the county board actually can't do that through like a tax assessment. We'd have to work through the town. So could you approach the town and say, town A, would you be willing to assign a special assessment for signage and charge every rural resident a $30 fee to help offset that?
What is it now? Sorry, I forget. Is it 75?
It depends what the sign is and if it's a
Just
pole.
the
And
address. Okay.
I think it's, yeah. But again, when we went through that process, that was determined that there's a whole lot of coordination with the towns. And then if you have a town that says, no, they don't want to do it or didn't want to do that rate, it became again, a discussion point of saying, no, this needs to be done countywide. It needs to be done in a timely manner. You're probably looking at probably at least a 2-year window to get something like this done, maybe spilling into a 3rd year. So based off of that, previous committees had decided that it should be done as a countywide project. In other words, we're going to replace all the signs. And then as those are done, then we're going to go back to the self-sustaining model of the sign fades, gets damaged, whatever. It goes through the natural process for replacement and you bill the property owner appropriately.
Mhm. Okay, Supervisor Bolton. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A clarification on table 1, which is page 47 of the packet. It says, this is referencing emergency services. It said, as far as the central station or whatever, it says move to 2027, but doesn't that move to 2026, not 2027? Because when you look at 2026, it's there, but then 2027, it says move to 2020, or, you know, I'm just trying to, I think we, just a little.
What did we list that one, Steve?
I think it should say 2026, right?
Yes, correct.
So that's
Good
just
catch.
a little typo or whatever.
Yep.
And then referencing the question about radios for the towns, do we have a sense of approximately for the average town, what that cost would be for radio upgrade?
Yep.
Okay.
So what we did is we actually did an inventory with every single, I guess, current user. So we have a complete inventory done and we provided that. Again, we gave them list cost. Again, we're hoping that cost would come in under that, but we gave them a potential cost for each township.
But I mean, can you tell me like approximately what that average would be? Do you know what that is offhand?
I think it was like $4,000 a radio.
$4,000 a radio?
Correct. A handheld, correct.
So that doesn't include pagers?
The pagers with additional costs on top of that.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, the truck radios too.
Yep.
$4,000 a radio.
Yep.
All right, thank you.
I was looking for the information. I think I have it. It was in a letter that was sent to the Towns Association, to all the towns,
And
municipalities.
we provided, if you go back in your, I'm sorry, it's in your email too. We provided you a copy of a sample letter that was sent out to each township that has the numbers in there for you.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, Todd?
And just a quick question, on page 47 on the table, is there, maybe it's in here somewhere, but I'm not recognizing it. What was the KIP that we approved for 2025? Is it that 5.2? Did we approve that in 2024? Is the 5.2 the approved KIP coming into 25? Or is that what the KIP is now?
That is what the KIP
KIP
is
is
now.
now.
What was the approved KIP?
It was 4.6 approximately. So you take off what we added was that 350. And then the body scanner, that 191. So that's what the increase was.
Okay, so that 2024 adopted CIP, that 4.66 is what we adopted for,
That's what's in the budget right now, currently
Okay.
this year. That's.
so
what we
we're
got.
11% above
That is
in
correct.
the levy category, and we're
Yep.
16%. So all right, well, to me, I'm confused by that bottom line. So I suppose we don't know what we're gonna spend in KIP in 2024 with the actual expenditure year over year is where we are at with that, because I thought that that's what that was comparing. I thought we were 11% over our 2024. KIP,
Correct.
but-
No, that
That
is
is
correct. Yeah,
That is
you're saying
Okay,
that
so
right.
let me re-ask the question. What was approved for KIP in 2025? Was it that 4.66? Because 11% seems to be that 535.
No. So the way we present it, and maybe let's make sure we're on the same page. So that 4.66, that's what was adopted for 2024, correct?
Yep.
In the original draft that you probably saw, let's say 2 months ago, we had probably proposed a number, I think it was about 2% or 1%
Yeah,
higher. So it's probably 4.7, what we brought forward in the first draft.
Mhm.
What you see before you now proposed is 5.2.
Yep.
Knowing that we're over our target amount. And the reason why think we're over is because of the courtroom system and that scanner. And again, the only reason why I'm proposing going higher this year is because we have, in essence, with our budget, we have the money available to make those projects happen.
Yep.
If
I
we-
just was trying to tie it together between the 2024 actual, 2025 budgeted, and then, what we're proposing here.
You're considering the 2025, just to make sure I get your numbers right.
Yeah, okay. And then the other question, it's just more procedural and this doesn't have to be a complicated answer, but to me, it seems a little backwards that we adopt and approve the KIP at this county board floor, and then we're gonna go get explanation for it in September. Wouldn't it be more appropriate in case we change something to approve it after we have our retreat or during our retreat?
So normally, the normal process is that the first review of the KIP goes to finance in June, because this is the very first step. And when we prepare our budget, our annual budget, and the reason being is that way we have an idea of what we need to put into the budget. So then in July, it comes back to finance again for their final approval to move it to county board in July. So originally, this KIP plan should have been approved in July, with the notation that throughout the budget process, that these KIP projects that we have built in 2025 can be adjusted, removed, or up, or whatever, up through the adoption in November. However, at finance, they decided not to pass it and to have it one more month to look at it. So then it went back to finance. Actually, it was the joint admin finance, and that got approved there, and that's the reason why it's coming here. So really, we're like 1 month late or behind. I shouldn't say behind, but then the normal process that we have with the KIP.
So approving it after the retreat is too late for your financial calendar going into the remainder of the year, is that what?
No, you could still make changes. I mean, up until November, before the adoption of the budget. I mean, actually, you can make a change on the floor of the budget, but yeah. So this KIP today is just you're approving the plan with the notation that we have the 2025 KIP that's presented to you today already built in the budget. And then at the retreat, if there's any type of changes that need to be made then, and we'll adjust the budget at that time or after that.
Just, this is one of those things where just because you did it in the past doesn't mean you have to do it the same way.
Yeah.
And this is one of those things we could change the process if you'd like in the future, but part of the goal of why the timeline was set up that way was try to eliminate some of the moving parts. Because again, we're trying to build a balanced budget for you to consider. And really what we need is, what do we want to push forward for the 2025? So if there was something in that KIP that you really wanted to push through, like for example, if I presented a budget of 4.7, you said, no, I really want that courtroom technology included, that's a blip for me to deal with, but I need to deal with that blip so I can bring you a balanced budget. So it's just a matter of the timing and logistics of trying to tighten up some of those numbers. But yeah, from my standpoint, it truly is advisory, but it gives a tool for us, for Steve and I, to build that budget. But again, it's really up to the county board to adjust even what's going to be in the budget for next year through the retreat and then coming back to the committees. But even for those future years, it's really just a guide for us more than anything. But again, it is one of those things, the chicken or egg type thing, but it is one of those things that's been done in the past, because we try to at least set our KIP so that way, if there was a big number, that affects what we have to do on the department operational side to adjust for it. So that's why we try to do it that way.
Understood. Yeah, it just, it just would cause one to think that there's something there you don't want, you better not vote for this resolution. I understand it. It's almost, it really isn't much of a vote of anything. You're just saying, hey, we'll talk about it more here in a couple more weeks, right?
Yep. Supervisor Anderson.
To Todd's question, I've always viewed this as approval for budgeting purposes only. That's what you're getting.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, except that it's never been worded that to his statement. The wording is inappropriate then. Yeah, exactly. So I agree with you in that respect, yes. It is. But it's logical. Now the question is page 52, even though the item appears on several other pages underneath the library. That is for the Sturgeon Bay branch only, correct?
Correct.
So is it, again, partially semantics, partly the way I think, can we say library Sturgeon Bay branch?
Yes, we definitely could.
Title it just, if you don't read the entire title, you don't understand the budgeting aspect, you unclear.
Yes, I would concur.
Thank you.
Okay.
Just to add on one quick comment too, just based off discussion, that's why I'm bringing this up. Because again, this is the first chance that some of you have seen besides the finance committee, like for example, the scanner or even the justice center. So again, why we're trying to figure out what's the best path forward, this is an opportunity, again, for today to say, okay, we understand what you're trying to build into the budget, but at the retreat and through this process, there's still time now for you guys to ask questions. We'll have the sheriff there. Okay, tell us why you need this, or you can ask Jason's here, but I mean, you can take the time to say, Jason, is this the best way, or should we divide it up? Again, based off our discussions, I think from what Jason told me, it's probably better to go without dividing it up, but we could have that discussion of why we put it in that way. So again, I just want to make sure you're understanding that, again, you're not, it's for budgeting purposes. It was a great way of saying it. It really is a guide for this body to know in general what we're going to try to accomplish, and to give Steve and I guidance to build it into the budget for you to consider. But then you guys have the full opportunity to decide whether or not you want to go in that direction.
I think this is perhaps one of the more complicated capital improvements plans, because of the size of the communications project, which is, approximately 25 million or close to that, which will also require bonding more than likely for the county to be able to build that. And we've had projects in the past, Skip, like the museum archives, which was over budget and nothing has been done. So we have to predetermine an amount for that and the process for going forward, because all the other projects factor into how much we borrow and how much we might be able to use from our reserve funds. So Supervisors, that'll.
Mr. Chairman, this probably goes to the process, maybe for the workshop and just for a follow-up, Ken. And that is, we know in the last couple of years, we've been dealing with inflationary pressures, and we, in recent years, have put a little bit more focus on fees and make sure that we're covering inflation. And I'd just like to make sure that when we're at the workshop, we get some visibility to that, to make sure that we're be able to recoup fees because of the inflationary pressures that we're facing. Thank you.
Okay, seeing no request for any further comment, we have a motion by Supervisor Miller, a second by Supervisor Gunlickson to approve the capital improvements plan resolution 2024-45. Okay, we need a majority vote of the quorum. Could we go to the board, please? Okay, that passes on a vote of 17 yes, no opposition, and 4 absent at this time. Okay, we'll go to ordinances. Ordinance 2024-06. I was going to ask Mr. Supervisor Engelbert, and he's left.
He left, yes.
Okay, okay. Okay, Supervisor Combs, could you explain that's up in your Northern Door area? Supervisor Combs, could you introduce the resolution on the speed zone on County Highway A?
The resolution is to move or lower the speed limit from the current 35, I believe it is, for 0.2 of a mile, and then move it further south for 0.3 of a mile, change that to 45 miles per hour.
Okay, any questions? Anyone, Supervisor Boltman?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just curious, if this was brought forth by the town, or was it like local citizens? And also, if anybody can, I mean, reading these charts, you know, where it's the speed statistics, I mean, I don't know that I really understand that. I mean, I think this makes sense, but I was just curious, like, where, I guess mostly just curious where this originated, where this request originated.
Okay, could someone from the Facilities Committee explain?
I can, to the best of my ability here. but
Okay,
I think it came more or less from citizen requests, as we get quite often. And, because of that, there was some questions referred back to the town board. There was a speed study that happened. The speed study does not necessarily support lowering the speed limit. However, the amount of traffic and driveways, the amount of driveways in that area could have allowed for an exception by the town to go ahead and lower it. It was a fairly robust debate in the committee, as you know, obviously these requests are dangerous because we get a lot of them. And what makes this one qualify for this reduction in speed. So, you know, as we concluded the debate, it was, I believe, 4-3 to accept the reduction in speed. And I want to say, from my recollection, this is mostly a citizen request that came through.
And just to add on to that, it was a citizen's request. The area that we're talking about here, we reduced it by, was it 0.2 of a mile from the initial 0.3 of a mile? And this is an area, apparently there was a fairly significant bus accident a couple of years ago or a year ago. And it was actually, I think it was the mom of one of these kids that presented. So this area that we're talking about is a little bit more susceptible to the bus stopping situations.
It was originally proposed a longer area, and then noted that it was back to the 0.3 of a mile, I believe is what it is. So,
Supervisor Hannibal.
Add to that, a reminder that most people here probably don't understand. Municipalities have to do a legitimate DOT study to drop a speed limit down more than 10 miles from the postable speed, which is 55 on this road.
There's a state statute that
It's
applies.
the state statute that applies, and it's very extensive. And that was one of the comments back to the town, because if the town wanted to spend that money for the DOT study, that's up to them. They had to be referenced that way. This is the only drop in speed that we can do with some measurable of effectiveness without having to go through the study that probably won't. And the example I keep giving is in Carlsville when I was on the town board. We'd like to drop it below 45, and every time a study gets done, it's denied because it doesn't meet the criteria to do that.
Mhm. Supervisor, Stromo.
Yeah, it did come to the town board and that's my district and I'm on the town board, but did the study say it shouldn't be lowered at all, right? I mean, anyone interpret the study differently? Okay, it is hard to read it. I don't understand it, but
Speed study.
yeah.
Mr. Ash made mention did not support the reduction.
Correct.
It did not. Speed study did not support the reduction.
Supervisor Fisher, you had a question?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was one of the supervisors who was not in favor of this. We have had these discussions for many years. I hate to keep bringing it up, but I've been here and been on this committee for 23 years now. I've seen it a lot. And every time the highway commissioner, for the most part, and does this time, not support lowering the speed limit. The study with the DOT does not support lowering the speed limit. As myself, we were camping up at Peninsula the last week of July, so I was going over that road every day. I never came across another car coming up or down that road. I'm sorry. The traffic isn't there. And if you keep going along, and we've always fought it, and for the most part, always denied these requests. And the belief is always it's feel-good legislation. And what you'll end up with is a county that has nothing but a 45-mile-an-hour or 35-mile-an-hour speed zone all through it. And no, when the DOT says don't do it, and the highway commissioner with his study says don't do it, I'm going to go with them. I will be voting no to this.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Supervisor Engel. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. I have to learn the procedure even after a few months. I look at this screen and that one, and I guess Supervisor Schomo was.
So I forgot to push it last time too. So I guess just in general from what's in the packet, and I was at the town board meeting and I heard a report too there, it's pretty hard to understand what this is suggesting. So I'm hearing that the county highway department says we shouldn't do it. And tell me if I'm wrong, the sheriff's department study says we shouldn't do it. It was done by the sheriff's department, an 8-day study, 12,000 cars passed. I'm just trying to understand it. How do we make this decision not understanding what the study even says or what's being recommended? Or if someone could just tell me, because I'm hearing different things from different people and I can't read any of that in the packet. It doesn't say any of that. So could someone just go over it quick? Because it's in my area and I'd like to make a good decision, but there's not enough information. for me
I
to
see
understand here.
Supervisor Engel would like to comment, and then I'll have Ken explain it further.
Sure, let me answer that. I'll
Okay.
do the quick version. So this really quick, this is, if you're familiar, this is County A coming up into State Highway 42. If you're familiar, the state parks just to the north, try to get your bearings, right? So again, if you're familiar with this area, I don't know the approximate location, but it slows down to 35, approximately where my cursor is. There's that hill right about there. That slows down to 35. Once you hit that 35, though, this segment going south was 55. A resident came in and requested that the speed be dropped from that 35 down to where the soccer.
Volleyball.
Just, I say soccer? Yeah, sorry, volleyball court, got the wrong sport in my head. But anyways, right to about where my cursor is in this location, okay? For that to occur, by the original request is to lower that down all the way to 35. For that to actually occur to 20 miles actually requires a special study by the DOT itself to actually make that type of reduction. Likewise, even for us to consider even dropping it 10 miles an hour, we're required to at least do a study. We're not required to follow that study. There could be other factors to consider, but we should do the study. So based on what would happen or what was discussed is that the study showed from this whole corridor from our study is that the speed hit or would match that 55 mile an hour. In other words, they're traveling at the safe speed and traffic naturally travels at what they feel is a comfortable speed. So in essence, the posted speed is the proper speed according to the paper study of what was done. Now, the committee and the county board can consider other factors. A lot of times they look at the number of driveways or special circumstances, whether they're school bus pickups or other vision angles that they can address, and they could consider that. So that was the discussion, was instead of going all the way down to there, was to actually just to reduce it to approximately where my cursor is. It's on the map, but instead of the 0.5 of a mile, reduce it down to the 0.3 of a mile. That would at least slow down the traffic from this segment here in relation, because there is a school bus that does do pickups. I think where the committee again got a little bit divided was, one is that it actually came in obviously from a request from a citizen. But again, if you look at this, I guess the straightness, the right word, the linear nature of the road is pretty flat. It's open. There's not a lot of vision things, and there's nothing that, even from driveways or other factors, that really justify it dropping down. That's where the vote, I think, was divided in terms of, do we even do the 0.3? Because there's going to be other circumstances where people might ask for that. So that's where I think the discussion is, and what there was a little bit of a struggle in terms of which way to go with the request itself. So again, what's before you though is reducing it for about, my cursor here would be 55, driving up to approximately where the cursor is, drops down to 45, and then drops down to 35 approximately here. So the intersection would be what's proposed to you right now. Correct. The 35 is there, correct.
So
If I didn't say
this
that, I
resolution
apologize.
covers 2 or 3/10 of a mile that ramps into the 35.
Correct.
Mhm.
Sorry, tonight. Hopefully that's a short version, so. David's back up on the queue.
David. Sorry, let's see. Okay, David, Supervisor Inigo.
So I drive that road often enough, and one of my difficulties with the bus being hit is somebody clearly did not see the lights. Because the hill is not that big of a dip for me to say that that was the issue. Another reminder that these studies were actually done with the message board, you know, the speed limit sign, right? What I find fascinating, and this is what I'm actually asking of the administrator, is the sheer number of past 5 over on this road coming this close to a T intersection. I'd be curious and fully noticing that sign, because you could not miss where it was placed. Is it possible to get these reports to the county board just as an email or something like that when we set these things out for the different municipalities? Because these are, for me, this is fascinating.
Oh, the speed board results?
Yeah.
I mean, the sheriff collects in their public documents, so yeah, we can get those.
You know, because I know
For the
like Village of Big Harbor does it on Harbor School Road once or twice a year. It would just be curious, but for me, I'm voting against it as well, because ultimately these numbers alone with the sign indicate that people aren't interested in even going the speed limit that's there now. It doesn't, the documentation does not support the drop.
Okay. Supervisor Norton.
Thank you. So having grown up there, I've driven that road and more times than I can count. I'm actually okay with it going 55 to 45 to 35. And the reason why is because I know that the change is coming, but if you're following someone who doesn't necessarily know that road and is just following GPS, I've had people slam on their brakes and almost come to a complete stop in front of me, with the big difference between 55 to 35. So that little bit, you might not have people try to come to a full stop in the middle of a road when you're behind them. You know, that's the way I look at it, is the fact that I've had people also not pay attention to signs and almost rear end me as I'm driving, because again, like I said, I know the back road. I take it all the time during summer because less people. So just on someone who drives it, I'm comfortable with the 55 to 45 and then 35.
Okay, Supervisor Bolton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I think this is a reasonable request. I mean, it's a really small area, and what does concern me is the 55 to 35, that I've had similar situations. And it's not a hill, but there's enough of a rise that it does obstruct your view a little bit in both directions. And I think it makes sense to just have that buffer, that 45 buffer. It's only 2/10 of a mile. That's where a whole bunch of driveways are. There's kids that live there. I mean, I just think it's the right thing to do. Thank you.
Okay. Guess it's time to call for the question.
Yeah, two more in the queue.
Two more. Okay, Supervisor Shaw.
I guess I just, when Bob said that about children as well, I think that that's, when we think about safety, I think that's one of the big things. We do see a lot of kids playing out and things like that. There's that block right there that there's a lot of homes. I think that's, I mean, when we're looking at that, that's what I kept thinking about. So I think that thinking about children's safety, I don't think that we can go wrong thinking about kids' safety. So that's all.
Okay, Supervisor Combs.
My question is on enforcement. Is the county going to enforce it? The Gibraltar constable going to enforce it, or is it going to be both on that stretch?
I believe both have jurisdiction, so.
I know Gibraltar sits on A between Greenwood and Jacksonport quite a bit there. That's strange.
Yep.
That range.
Okay, so we have a motion by Supervisor Combs and a second by Supervisor Boltman to approve the speed zone change on County Highway A. Use the voter board, please. That is approved with a vote of 15 yes and 2 no and 4 absent. Okay, so, okay, new business. I don't have anything. Oral committee reports. Review of committee minutes. Review of vouchers, claims, and bills. And announcements. The budget retreat will be Thursday, September 5th at 8 a.m. That's in Egg Harbor at the Crest Center. And the next county board meeting, because of the WCA conflict, with WCA convention conflict, county board will be on Thursday, September 26th at 9 a.m. And yes.
Just for the retreat, again, we have it down to starting at 8 a.m. I know it's the first week of school. Some of you are dropping off kids. That's not a problem. We like to just do the kind of get you all settled. We'll probably start promptly at 8:15, so you won't miss much if you're a little bit late. So that's fine that way. But please do plan. It will be just because we actually built a 2-year budget. It'll be a longer meeting. Again, we have breaks built in plus lunch, but I'm expecting we'll go at least until 2 o'clock. And then after that period of time, you also have the finance committee meeting that has its regular meeting to actually refer the budget back to the committee. So obviously for the county board, it'll be a full day to at least 2 o'clock. And then for the finance committee, that meeting's usually under 20 minutes. So I say I'd try to get you out of there by 6:30. No, just kidding. I'll get you out there as soon as we can. But right now we're looking at about 2 o'clock start for the finance committee. Oh, and I'm sorry, one other thing. So the Crest is a green tier community such as us, but one of their priorities is plastic. So they do not want us to bring or buy plastic water bottles. So please, we'll have like cups. You can go grab a sink, but if you'd like to bring your own water, please bring your own water if you could, or your thing like that, and you can fill it there. We will have other drinks and coffee there, but again, we're just trying to respect their community initiative as far as being green tier, and they do not want plastic water bottles. If you could, please. Thank you.
Yes.
Just FYI, starting in October, our finance committee is going to be moved from 11 o'clock. It historically is at 1. We're going to move it to 11. We're going to try that. So just if someone hopefully would want to attend, that will be at 11 o'clock going forward, starting in October.
That was done with the intent that the admin committee meetings are done in 2 hours. So I take note.
Actually, it was the admin committee that wanted us to do it so they could get. Okay, cheers.
Yeah. Okay, and you have an announcement.
I have a couple announcements. So for those of you that are registered for the WCA conference, you either got on your desk today your information or I gave it to you prior to this. And then the 2024-2025 Wisconsin County Officials Directory has arrived. If you'd like one, come to my office and we'll give them to you that way.
Okay, any other announcements? Okay, we're open for adjournment. We have a motion to adjourn, please. Motion by Rubler, to second by Shaw. All in favor of adjourning, signify by aye. Opposed? Thank you.